Welcome back. Let's now learn about some more mathematical operations and also about rounding numbers. Here we have already been using a lot of mathematical operations, for example, plus, minus, times, divided, exponentiation, and so on. So we don't need to go over these again. So let's start here with a square root. So the square root is a part of the math namespace. So let's write here console.log. And now here we need to pass the math dot square root. This is the shortest form of square root. And then here we need to pass a number. So for example, I am giving 25. And then now let's reload and see the result. See here we have 5. So this means that the square root of 25 is 5. And then we will also do the same thing using the exponentiation operator. So further, let's write here 25. And by doing 1 divided by 2. So that 2 is the square. So we want the square root. We can 1 divided by 2. Now let's reload and see the result. So here actually we need to put this in parentheses. Now let's see that. Reload. So here now the result is 5. And so now let's see an example for using the cubic root. So for that let's write here 1 by 3. And then here I am giving the number 8. So 8 means the cubic root of 8 is 2. Let's reload. See here we have the result 2. So this is the way of writing. We get the solution for the square root and the cube root. And now let's see an example for the maximum number. So for that let's write here math dot max. And here I am giving the numbers 5, for example 15 and 25. So let me give some more numbers 34, 14, 11, 7. See the result, we get 34 as the maximum number. And so here this max function actually does type coercion. And now let's see that. Let's give this as a string. Now let's see the result. So now still we get the 34 as the result. And so now let's see the another one. So here for suppose I am giving the for example, if we do that for parsing, now it does not support this here. Let's reload. So it is displayed as not a number. So this means that it does not work in max function. Now like this max function, we also have the min function. Let's see the, now let's see the result. So here the minimum value is the 5. Now besides these two methods, there are also constants on the math object or on the math namespace. So for example, if we wanted to calculate the radius of a circle with 10 pixels, we could do that. So let's write the math.pi. Using the Math.pi, we can calculate. So let's take a look. Reload. See here the pi value is 3.1415 like that. So this is a constant value that you might know probably. And so again, let's say that we need that this is the 10 pixels for that from the user interface. So for that, let's say that number dot. So we need to give the parse float. And then here give the 10 pixel and also. So this is how we calculate the area of the circle. So with this using the radius. So now we get the result. And now another thing that is on the math object is the random function that we already have been using a couple of times. And it is very important to be able to generate good random numbers when we need them. So before we have already created random dice rolls, remember that. So that we did by math.random. Let's write here. Log. Math.random. And so this will give us a number between 0 and 1. So let's reload and see the result. See here we have a number between 0 and 1. And also this random value, so when we reload here, we will get the another one like that. See here the number is changing. And so I need to multiply this by, for example, 6. And now I want to remove the decimal part. So for that, let's use here Math.trunc. So right now let's see the result. See here now the value is 5021 and the value is changing. So without the decimal part. Now here the problem is that then the highest number could be 5. So for that simply add +1 to offset the truncation. So let's see the 6, 2, 6, 5, 5. Now we get 6 also. Now let's remember this formula that we can then use a random number generator. And this is going to be super useful in many apps that they are going to build throughout your career. Now there is actually a problem with this implementation of this function in this first version of this video. And now let's see working on this random number generator. Now let's write the const, create a function that random int that is equal. And so here we will pass in a maximum and a minimum. So for that let's write min max. Because we basically want to generate a random number between these two values. So give arrow function. Now let's actually first call this function random int. So for suppose I am giving the 10, 20, 10 to 20. And then this is how we could call this function. Or maybe we want a random number. So a random number of integer between 0 and 3. So let's write that one also. 0, 3. And so these are all the different types in which we will able to use this function. So let's now actually build out this function here. So step by step, because this will teach you a lot about random numbers and how to generate them. So as always, let's start from math.random. We already know that this will give us the numbers between 0 and 1. So now if we wanted to scale this, basically if we wanted to have a number, for example, between 0 and 2, then we would multiply this by 2. So let's do that. For suppose I am giving that, I need 2 times of this, giving 2. So this is for a number between 0 and 1. Now let's see the result. So here we need the result as between 1.9999 and so on. So but keep in mind that these are not integers. So basically these are all the decimal numbers. And so now we will, before we can move on, actually take this part out, decimal part. So with the Math.floor. So here basically rounding this value, rounding down this value. And so with this, we will now always get a number which is either 0 or 1. Because again, this one here will stay between 0 and 1.9999 and so on. And so if we take off the decimal part, we will end up with a 0 or 1. So with this right now, we can generate 2 different random numbers. So that is because we have these 2 right here, this one. So but of course this needs to be dynamic. So it needs to respond the maximum or minimum values to get an input here. So for example, we do not want only 2 possible random values, but really 10 or actually 11. Because this minimum and maximum should be included. So if we count from 10 to 20, that will actually be 11 numbers, or here it will be 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3. That are 4 numbers. So how can we get to these numbers of values that we want? So here instead of hard coding this value, we just need to subtract the max. So let's write the max minus min. So now here in this case, that would give us 20 minus 10. So that is 10. So then here we get the 3 minus 0, that is 3. So just remember that actually we had here not 10 different random numbers but 11, and here not just 3 but 4. So again that is because both the minimum and the maximum should be part of the range. So just to fix that, all we need to do is add +1. So let's add +1. And so with this, what we have at this point will already give us the correct number of possible random integers. So now we are done with this. Let's log this to console. Now let's see the result. See here we have the result 7. Now let's place this in comments. And so let's reload. See here we get all these values, different values. Here you see that the 10 also included in these values. So see that. So we already done this before, which is initially is a number between 0 and 10, all the way to making it dynamic, taking into account for minimum and the maximum. So after this first step, now the possible number of random integers is correct. So, but we need to basically then shift this range to the correct place. So basically that it can start not at 0, but really 10 here. So all we need to do is to just what I just said, basically adding this value here so that the range starts from plus min. Now let's see the reload. So now we see the result. See here, before we get all the values that are below 10 and also 10 also included in that. But now here we get the correct result that is between the 10 to 20. So see 10, 16, 14 and 16. So if we ever need some random number between two values, then we will do like this. Now let's start the rounding integers. Let's write here rounding integers. So now let's see an example there. So .log. We have already been using the Math.trunc. So let's write the Math.trunc. And now I am giving that, for example, 25.5. So this is a decimal part. So here, what is this means? We simply remove a decimal part. So let's see the result. See here we have the 25 as result. Here this Math.trunc removes the decimal part, and also we also have a round. So for that, let's write here console.log Math.round 25.5. Now let's see the result. For example, I am giving here 25.23 like that. Also same copy paste, and now here I am giving the 25.8. So here what is this means? This round method. So this will always round to the nearest integer. That means that if 25.2 means that is 25 and 25.8 means we get the 26. So let's see the result. See here we have the 25 as the 25.21 and 26 as the nearest integer for this. And after that we have another one that is ceil. That is again I am writing that. Here I am changing this to 3 for example, and this to 8 or 9. So with these both cases, in these both cases, we get the output as 26. So let's see the, see here we have the 26 as both cases. Now here we have another one that is floor. Let's write here. And so these two will both be rounded down to 25. So let's see that one. Let's change these two. Reload. See here we have the 25. So one of the thing that I need to tell you that all these methods, they also do a type coercion. So if we do this, then it is going to work just for the same. Let's try here. Now let's see that. See here it is going to work. Here you might think that the floor and trunk are very similar in working. Let's place it down here. So here these two work as a same. So when we are dealing with the positive numbers, so basically floor and trunk both are cut off the decimal part when we are dealing with positive numbers. So however, for negative numbers, it does not work the same way. So now let's compare them. So let's see the trunk and floor, and let's give a minus. Now let's see the result. See here, the trunk has minus 25 and then floor is minus 26. Because just like before, it gets truncated. So it simply removes this part here, but floor now gets rounded to minus 26. Because with negative numbers, rounded works are the other way around. So actually, a floor is a little bit better than trunk because it works in all situations. So if we are dealing with positive or negative numbers, so here in this case, even if we get negative inputs, so therefore we need here the floor because that will round the integers like this way. So this is all about the rounding integers. Now let's talk about floating point numbers. So let's write the floating point numbers, or we can also say that rounding decimals. So let's write decimals. Let me show you an example. So in decimals, we have to specify the number like for example 22.7 like that, and then on that number we call the fixed method. So that is, let's write the dot here dot to fixed method, and now here I am specifying an 0. So all these in one bracket. Now let's see the result. See here we have 3. Here this 2.7 is converted to 3, and you also see that this is in white color, and so this means that it is actually a string. So here, to fixed method will always return a string, not a number. This is the important point to keep in mind. So if we set here, instead of 0, place 3, then what is the result? Place 3. Now let's see the result. See here, it returns the 2.700. Here, 2 fixed is set to 3. So further, it is placed zeros until it has exactly 3 decimal parts. Now let's see another example. So here just add some more things like 3, 5, 6, 3, 6, 7 like that. So and now here I want only 2 decimal parts. Let's give 2. Now let's see here the result should be 2.37. Let's reload. See here the result is 2.37. So now if we wanted to convert this result to a number, then we simplify. Would have to add the plus sign that we already know. Let's place here plus sign. And then now let's see the result. Now 2.37 is a number. So with decimals, it works differently than with integers. So that's once again because things in JavaScript evolved kind of a weird way in this kind of old language. And if the language was designed today, definitely this would be very different. But yeah, that is what we have to work with right now. So just keep in mind that this here is similar to the string methods. And so this is a number, so it's primitive. And primitives actually doesn't have methods. So behind the scenes, JavaScript will do boxing. And boxing is to basically transform this to a number object, then call the method on the tab object. And then once the operation is finished, it's convert it back to primitive. And the first thing that I want to do is to round the requested loan amount. So let's give here the details, username, and then the password. Now here see that it is looking like a weird because of this number. Now here I am requesting a loan amount like this, 150, giving a decimal points. Now see here we have a loan amount of this 150.35. But in real, we never seen that giving loan like this, 150.35 like that. So in this situation, we need to give the round functionality. So for this loan amount, so let's do that here in this loan here. So here we need to give that Math.floor, and so now here it will do the type coercion on itself, and because we simply want to round any value down. Now let's see again, give the details. Let's ask here for giving the 150.55. Here we have the 150. So it removed the decimal part. And then next up, we need to give the fixed functionality or method to make our numbers here look a little bit nicer. So for example, here we see that this decimal part is 79.79 like that with these two numbers. But here only we have the this 0.9. And so this would look like the points 90. And so this should be 1300.00. And the same also here up. So further, we always use to fixed function that we just learn about. And so let's do that in all places where we display numbers on the screen. So where we display these numbers on the screen, and that is these three functions. So display moments, display balance, and display summary. And so let's start here at the top. So here we have the first occurrence, that is here in these moments. So here it's a number that we display on here. We can simply call the dot fixed. Let's write dot 2 fixed, and then with two decimal parts. So let's give 2. And now let's just copy this one. So here in this display balance, let's copy here, paste. Let's do the same with the summary also. 2 fixed 2. And here with the summary also, let's do the same. So that we will then hopefully also fix this weird really long number. So in this income dot paste, and here also dot 2 fixed number 2. And so here we see that this is a long number that happens because of the rounding errors in JavaScript. So that I explained just during the previous lecture. So everywhere we print a number, I will do this now. So now let's the result. Also in this interest also, let's give a save. And this interest, paste. And now give a save. And then see the result. Reload. Give the details. Now you see here we have that all is working good. See, we have all these having two decimal parts here and here. See that, and here in this in out and interest and also the current balance also having two decimal parts. So here this is now working a lot. So and also some other stuffs, some more math functions, including some more rounding. So in this lecture we will, this is a short overview of that, like getting the max and min also in this. So it is good to know functions, and of course there are a lot more. So if we need something like logarithmical functions or signs, then of course you can always check out the MDN documentation. So this is all about the session. See you in the next lecture. Thank you.